The other big issue, the opportunity that we see is this push to the edge.
Yeah.
That more devices are capable of doing some AI, not necessarily a lot, but there's a lot of things that don't need a lot.
Does the push to the edge also coincide with the push to leverage open source versus proprietary, and to have some limited, obviously, because you're not using the power of a proprietary model, but to have the computing power resident in your own location?
Yes, right the way down to my phone.
Yeah.
Right. So there's things that don't have to happen that fast, so that I can wait a few seconds or a few minutes for an answer, and I multiply. So rather than concentrating all the computing power in one place, which is very expensive and uses a lot of power, electrical power,
Yeah.
and then hoping that I can satisfy the aggregate demand of tens or thousands or millions of users, I break it all out and put little pieces of it in tens or thousands of millions of places, because it's unlikely that everybody's going to ask the same question
Same question,
simultaneously.
right? Right. So this is fascinating because obviously there's been, I guess it's gone through cycles, but we've been going through a down cycle, if you will, in terms of companies having their own proprietary data centers and moving everything to the cloud. And so this trend towards leveraging open source, but having it leveraging also the power of the edge, almost sounds to me like it will be an increase back to companies managing their own data centers, rather than pushing everything out into the cloud.
It's the jury is out. There is definitely some work migrating back from the cloud because of data privacy concerns. But the issue really is that uh, AI, as we generally think of it, particularly the closed models, are actually software as a service. So you're sending your data to somebody. You're not using platform with your software and data on it to run the application. And that's it. My view is that we will increasingly see people building tuned versions of open source models, which is why we think this is happening as fast as it is. Tuned version of open source models, which they will work out locally and then implement in the cloud, but as platform as a service, not software as a service.
That makes sense. So back to the question of Gen AI versus data analytics AI that is driven more from an ML and RPA perspective. Even still, with companies bringing more and more power back, if you will, to within their own infrastructure, that still, to me, would speak to the ability to leverage greater resources to addressing and solving issues and problems that can be solved through ML and RPA, and figuring out where that can be done to a greater degree within companies.
So the more and more routine things are going to get software augmentation of some form. More and more processes are going to get data driven, which is not a panacea in the sense that history is not always a good predictor of the future. But where there's an evidence-driven performance improvement opportunity, we're going to see that happen a lot more. Part of the problem we have today is that we don't really have a consistent open reference architecture for how to do that. So there's a danger, just as there was in the early days of ERP, that RPA will lock you into a vendor who may not exist 5 years from now.
Hmm.
And so we'll probably see a consolidation around platform strategies there. The other interesting dimension of all of this is that there's a lot of focus on vertical industry or market vertical applications because we have to tune to the language of the vertical. But there's also a lot of horizontal opportunities where every business has the same kind of general problems that you could solve with a lightly tunable horizontal solution. And I think we're going to see both of those explode over the next 2 to 5 years, or even 6 months. These days I've given up predicting
Who knows
timelines.
what the timeline is?
Who knows?